What we have here is a radiator that's been painted over a bunch of times. And what we want to do is clean it up and make it look pretty again. Okay, what we're going to do is cut around so we don't pull the paint off the wall. And those are Phillips. So now I gotta go get a Phillips. Straight slots are easier to get out than Phillips. Phillips, when filled with paint, are not so easy. So let's see. Okay, that one came. So off this one comes. Let's see about this one. All right, there, that one came off too. Now we'll try to pull this off without pulling paint. And there we go. Next step. So the next step is, and I don't know how clearly you can see this, but this has got multiple coats of paint on, has no definition left to it at all, and it's probably all latex. There might be some oil in there, I don't know. The next thing I do is I take some soap and water, and I let this sit a week. And what it does is it softens up that paint for the next step. So after sitting for about a week, this is what it looks like. And now it looks pretty disgusting. But if you look at it, you can see that the paint just pretty much comes right off. That's with my fingernail. Now a wire brush would take it off real nice, but I have a sandblaster. So I'm going to use the sandblaster. So a week ago we put these things in here and let them soak. And as I said, you can scrape this paint off pretty much with your nail. It comes right off. And with a sandblaster, it'll be even easier. So that's the next step. So let's do some sandblasting. And I get less reflection on this glass if I turn these overhead lights out. So we're going to turn the lights out. And we got darkness. Now we got light. So there's no need to bore you guys with having you watch me sandblast these things, because that does take a little time. So when I get these done, I'll bring you back. So the next step is to disassemble these things. And I've already got two disassembled. And probably the hardest part is getting this little knob right here. Getting that little knob to come apart. It's a press fit. I actually broke two of them, and I got smart and I put a little heat on this one, and now it comes right apart. So the first step is to take this knob apart, and if you work it real gently, it'll come apart. And it's a two-piece press fit, and you really don't want to break it. Now if you do break it, there's a couple ways to fix it, and I've thought about it. And one is I could tack them back together with a weld underneath. I could epoxy them back together, and it would probably hold. And I could drill a little hole through it and put a little tiny screw through it, nut and bolt, or just a screw through one side and tap it into the other side, and that would hold it together. And the reason we got to take it apart is the whole point of doing this is to make them look like brand new. And anybody that does this kind of stuff will tell you that preparation is 90% of the job. So the better you can get this cleaned up, the better the result will be. So taking it all apart and getting it completely clean will make a big difference. And as you can see, it's not completely clean, even though the top sides look clean. And the other thing that happens is when people do these things, when they paint the walls, what they typically do is they paint the inside. I don't know why they paint the inside, because the whole point, and when it comes from the manufacturer, is it's black. And the reason it's black is so that when the heat register is closed, you don't see it. So when you paint it white and you close it, you can see it. And I don't want that. So what we're going to do is powder coat the inside black the way it would have come from the factory. See what I mean? See how it was all painted? So we'll powder coat the inside black so you can't see it when it's closed, and it'll look pretty. So I'll go back to sandblasting now, and I'll clean up the inside, and I'll bring you back to the next step. Okay, we're ready for the next step. We've got everything cleaned up, and you got to remember the most important thing is to look at all your pieces and make sure they're all clean. If you try to put a finish coat on something that's not completely clean, it's going to show through. So inspect your items really carefully, because this is the most important part of the project. Get it clean. And looking right off the bat, I can see I got a little paint right there, so I'm going to put that back in. But what I'm going to do first is all the pieces that go in back of the radiators, all those pieces are going to be black. So I'll powder coat all these pieces black. And I did find the little screw that it dropped out, and that did go in the bag. And it is important to bag stuff. So there are things that you don't want to get powder on, particularly the threads. If you get powder coat on the threads, then it makes it very difficult to put it back together. I mean, you can strip it apart, but it's tough. So they make a and if you paint, and you certainly can paint, it's not as much a concern because paint is not as thick as what powder coat is. Powder coat has thickness to it. So they make a special tape that can withstand the heat. And I'm going to skip the outgassing step just because you really only have to worry about air that's trapped inside a metal that's new metal. Older metal pretty much has off-gassed any air that's trapped inside the metal. So wrap up the threads, cut it off, and then I make hangers. I mean, they sell them, but there's no need to buy hangers. Just take a coat hanger and cut it up. And where I get my coat hangers is I have one shop, but you can go to a bunch of shops that have uniform services, and they always have hangers laying around. And if you talk to them nice, they'll let you have some. Make a little hanger here. So that's probably a little tight. Slide that down in there. Tighten it up. Put a little hook on the top, like that. And you have a hanger, and you can only coat the head. You keep the threads off, uncoated. Okay, one thing I do is when I put these screws into the hangers, I put it in so that the head is slightly proud of the hanger, and that way powder coat gets in underneath the head, so the whole head gets coated. So I got to do that for the rest of these screws, and we're going to powder coat the back flapper, the pivot, this little thing that slides up and down there. I don't know what you call it, but I guess it allows you to adjust how far you can open or close, and the screws, all black. So that's the next step. I'll bring you back when we're ready to do that. Okay, I got all the pieces, the threads are taped, everything is hung. I like to pre-hang things in the oven so I know how it's going to go in when they're powder coated, because I don't want them to touch. So they're all spaced pretty good, they'll fit real well. What you really should do is preheat the oven before you put the items in. Because I have so many items, I'm going to have to make multiple trips, and I want the timing to be the same for all the pieces. I'm not going to do that in this case. This oven heats up pretty quick, and the mass of these items aren't going to really affect how quickly it heats up. So we're ready to powder coat. We're going to transfer these things to the booth. We'll put some powder on and we'll put them in the oven and they'll be done. Now, just an aside, people think powder coat is expensive and they can't afford it. That's really not the case. If you watch for ovens out on the side of the road, it has to be an electric oven. Ovens on the side of the road, or your neighbor's getting a new appliance, or you go to an appliance store and ask them if they have any items that were traded in or picked up. All you need is an electric oven that'll reach 450 degrees, and most of them go to 425, some of them you can go to 450. And a little cheap powder coat gun from, and I hate to say it, Harbor Freight, you can get professional results. And it's much better than paint. Paint takes, 24 to 7 days to fully cure, whereas with powder coat, you put it on, you heat it, you let it cool, and it's cured and you're ready to play with it. I mean, within an hour and a half, you have parts that you can bolt on to things. So, just as an aside, I can't speak very well. All right, here we go. The powder I use is from Prismatic Colors, and they'll sell at any quantity. I buy in 10-pound quantities because I use it quite a bit, but you can buy 1-pound quantities. 10-pound quantities does give you a discount in the price, but even in 1 pound, it's going to far be less than what you would pay in spray cans. Okay, let's get going. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I do have a basic how-to and what you need to powder coat. And you probably haven't guessed, but I really like powder coat. So that's on my website. I'll put the link down here. Another advantage of powder coat is, number one, there's no smells, there's no volatiles. And to clean up, you take an air gun and you blow off whatever you want to clean up, including the gun. And if you don't like what you get on a piece, you take an air gun, blow it off, and then put powder back on it again. So it's extremely easy to use. It's almost impossible to put too much on and get a run. So, okay. I'll do that for the other 3 groups. I kind of like to keep everything together. Probably doesn't make any difference because they're all manufactured in the same place, but I like to keep all the same parts associated with the same piece, and that way it goes back together pretty good. So I'll do the next couple pieces and then we'll be back. So we've got all the pieces powder coated, we're ready to cure. We got 400 degrees, we want 45 minutes. It wants to be 15 minutes at full temperature, but that's not the surface, that's the whole piece. So I go 45 minutes. That lets the piece come up to temperature and the powder coat cures. So I'll set this for 45 minutes. And I have the light set for 45 minutes. So in 45 minutes, I'll open doors, let it cool, and those parts are ready to use. So when I took these things apart, I mentioned to you that I broke the little pin that goes in there. It snapped right off. And I had a couple ways of fixing that. One was I could put a screw through it, I could epoxy it. But what I've decided to do is to drill them out and put a roll pin in there. So it's pretty much the same as what it was. So from my days of owning a shop, I have some roll pins, and this thing measures 198, so I'll use a 189 drill, and drill these things out. I'm not a machinist, so I don't know if that's a good press fit or not, but that's what I'm going to try to do. It might be a little tight. First step is to grind these things off so they're flush. So let's do that. Now, you may remember this is one of my first build projects. I built this stand. I'll put a link to it in the upper corner of this video. Okay, nice and flush. Nice and flush, and you can see the piece that's left in. Now the hole I'm drilling is actually a little bit bigger than that, so that piece is going to come out. Now I've set the depth of this drill so that it won't drill all the way through. Well, that's in the center. All right, let's go try it. All right, got to work just fine. Outstanding. So, the black pieces are done. Time to move on to the grills. We have two rooms, one in one color, one in another color. So I got to make two processes. So here we go. So I don't have a lot of powder, so I got to make it through all this. I think we're okay. So there's a little bugger in the powder. Try doing this with wet paint. Blow it off with a little air and put some powder back on, and no one will ever know. Radiator ducts is done. Let's take a look. This looks pretty good. Alright, on to the next step. Well guys, that was a lot of running around. Tuckered myself running around in that fast forward speed. The reason I had to do that was this video ran long, and I don't seem to be able to make shorter videos, and I do apologize. And I am truly looking for criticism on how to make better videos. So if you would comment down there, I'd appreciate it. It'll help me out. So we're on to the second to the last step here. Last step being putting them on the wall, but we got to assemble them now. We've got two. The color of the living room and the front hall, and this is going to go in a bathroom. So let's put it together. And everybody knows what that thing is. I really appreciate knowing what it is. I put it back in because it was there originally, but I don't know what it is or what it does. It seems to have no purpose. That's the wrong screw. Wouldn't do to have a black screw on the front. And speaking of screws, don't forget to do the mounting screws, because it'd be a heck of a thing to put this thing on the wall with old dirty rusty screws. So while you're at it, do the mounting screws. Okay. See, that thing goes like that. And I don't know what it does. But if you do, let me know. Alright. I'm going to put a little grease, just a little bit, in that runner. Just to make this door open and close a little bit better. And we'll stick this thing down in here. And then we'll take a little grease. And just a little bit, I mean that's hardly anything. And put it on there. And then I'll wipe off any excess. And line up the holes. And then, because you don't tighten these things down because you want that thing to open and close, a little Loctite. A little dab will do you. Most people don't know, but Loctite is really basically sugar. And when it solidifies, it locks the bolt in place. And I'm using medium here. Somebody's at the door. Wipe off all the excess here. And let's get this thing so it opens and closes. That's a little stiff. Okay, that'll do. And the Loctite cures will keep that screw from coming loose. Drop that in. Turns out you don't really have to take these things apart. You can get it in like that. Didn't realize that. Would have saved myself a lot of grief. We don't need any Loctite here. This gets tightened down. That's a little stiff. There we go. So, okay. Put that all down. Now we got to do this because you wouldn't think it, but when the furnace is running, it's blowing air, and I change these filters regularly. And I use the real fine filters, and I got to change them about every 2 months, or maybe even every month. I got a little thing on the thermostat that tells you when the filter needs to be changed. So if these things are running and you don't put a little weather strip around the outside, the air escapes out the outside, and you get dirt on the wall. It looks ugly. So, okay, while I'm doing this, because we're getting towards the end here, and I'm not going to torture you with putting these things on the wall, because anybody can put a couple screws in the wall. Guess what you do if you like, or if you don't like. If you don't like, hit the don't like. But if you do like, hit the like button down in that corner and subscribe. There's a little bell down there, and if you hit that little bell, you'll get notifications when I put out a new video. If you don't put the bell out there, you won't get any notifications, but if you subscribe, it helps me out. And I'd appreciate it if you did that. Now this is not sticky. That piece of paper is on there to keep the tape from sticking to itself. What's running there in the background is the furnace. Okay, got 3 radiators that were all painted up, looked kind of ugly, didn't have any definition to them. Now we got 3 radiator grills. They're like new. I think that's pretty nice. So don't forget, please, if you like it, hit the button. If you don't like it, hit that button. Subscribe. Have a good day. Thank you.